In tonight's Government Insider, an update on the Party of Eight. 2 months after the death of Justice Antonin Scalia, the eight-justice Supreme Court is still figuring itself out. Now there is some indication that the court is trying to avoid division in an era of stark political partisanship and a rollicking presidential campaign. For more, I'm joined by Robert Barnes, Supreme Court reporter for the Washington Post. Robert, bring us up to date again and explain why there are still only 8 justices on the Supreme Court.
Well, the Senate Republicans say that they want to wait until after the election before deciding how to proceed on President Obama's nomination of Judge Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. They say that the American people should have a voice in this, since this vacancy occurred during an election year. And so right now it is at a standstill. No hearings have been scheduled. No vote is scheduled on Judge Garland.
All right, now you find that the number of cases the justices have accepted has fallen. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, there's a slight decrease that experts and people who cover the court have noticed. Not a huge one, but small. And also in the fact that some of them are not terribly controversial. You know, the court now is divided pretty much between 4 liberals, 4 justices who are more conservative in their voting pattern. And the justices clearly don't want to take cases that they know will just split them 4-4.
Robert, I'll follow up on that too, because since Scalia's death, the court has split 4-4 in 2 cases and part of a third. Could they end up divided over any other high-profile issues that you see coming up?
Well, I think there are. You know, you saw that, for instance, the Obamacare provision that says that employers have to provide contraceptive care for their female workers. There are groups, religious groups, who supply this coverage, who say that they should not be required to do it. You see the court working very hard, I think, to avoid a 4-4 split on that. They went so far as to put out sort of their own opinion for what a compromise might be, and ask both sides to comment back to them in formal filings to the court. So you see a lot of unusual activity going on as the court tries to find a way out of this 4-4 split.
How long can this drag on?
Well, you know, the court term ends in June. One thing that the court sometimes does in these circumstances is that they make their opinions narrow. We've seen that already this time too, where there could be 2 or 3 issues that the court decides, and instead it decides a very narrow one as a way to settle the case and leave those tough decisions for later when there are 9 members.
Before you go, Robert, I'm curious. Scalia was such a commanding presence on the court. How has the dynamic changed since his passing?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. As you say, he was a real dominating presence. He asked a lot of questions. He could be very sarcastic and very funny. He was always the justice who got the most laughs from the courtroom. Since then, it has been much quieter. There is not as strong a voice on the conservative side. And you've seen the liberal justices, especially the female justices, speak up more and dominate the questioning more.
You've been following the court for a long time. Is this the most unusual time that you've seen, or is this just another blip on the Supreme Court radar? No,
this is a very unusual time. You know, usually when there is a vacancy on the court, it is filled fairly quickly. You'd have to go back to Reagan's nomination that ended up with Justice Kennedy, to see one that has dragged on this long. And so, no, it's a very unusual time at the court.
Now, here's a scenario that I'm curious to get your opinion on. If Hillary Clinton is elected president, some of the rumors indicate that she would nominate Barack Obama to the High Court. Have you heard anything about that? Is it even possible?
It's possible, and it has been mentioned, but he has said he would not be interested in that job. He says when he's out of the presidency, he wants to do something else, and he says that the job of a Supreme Court justice is a little too cloistered for him.
It's always good to get your insight. Robert Barnes, Supreme Court reporter at the Washington Post. Thanks, Robert.
My pleasure.